Hey everyone, have you ever been told you couldn't do something? That you were too weak, too broken, too far behind to ever catch up? It's a pain that cuts deeper than any physical wound. But what if that very doubt became the fuel for your greatest victory? This is a story for anyone who's ever been counted out, for anyone who's had to fight their way back from the bottom. It's not just about a race. It's about a man, a diagnosis, and a finish line that proved every doubter wrong. If you're ready for a story of pure, unstoppable human spirit, you're in the right place. So get ready, because this one is a journey. And hey, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss a single step of this incredible comeback. Let us know in the comments about a time you proved someone wrong. Now, let's get into the story. The world had shrunk to the size of a hospital room. The air smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. Jonah lay in the stiff bed, the steady beep of the heart monitor a soundtrack to his shattered life. The doctor's words still echoed in the sterile silence. Chronic autoimmune myopathy. Your immune system is attacking your muscles. The weakness, the fatigue. It's going to be a long road. He was 28. A year ago, he'd been a construction manager. His body a reliable tool he'd never had to think about. He could carry sheets of drywall, frame a wall in an afternoon, and outwork men twice his size. Now he needed both hands, trembling with the effort, to lift a plastic cup of water to his lips. The muscles in his legs had withered, feeling like loose rubber bands. He was a prisoner in a body that had betrayed him. The year that followed was a blur of slow, painful rehabilitation. Physical therapy 3 times a week, where simple leg lifts felt like attempting to summit a mountain. The frustration was a constant, simmering companion. His old friends from the construction site stopped calling. Their world was one of physical prowess, and he no longer belonged. The only person who stuck around was his older sister, Maya, who became his cheerleader, his cook, and his rock. One afternoon, a year after his diagnosis, he was sitting in a park, watching runners glide effortlessly along the path. Their legs were pistons of power and grace. A deep, aching longing filled him. It wasn't just about running. It was about freedom, about commanding his body again. That night, he looked up the city's annual marathon. It was 6 months away. A crazy, impossible idea took root. He wouldn't just walk again. He would run. He would run 26.2 miles. He knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed a coach. He found one online. Marcus the Hammer Riggins, a former collegiate runner known for his no-nonsense, brutal training regimens. Jonah, with a hope he hadn't felt in years, scraped together his savings and booked a session. The meeting was at a local track at 5 a.m. Jonah arrived in his old, too-loose sweatpants, his gait still unsteady. Marcus was everything Jonah used to be. Tall, broad-shouldered, radiating a cocksure athleticism. He didn't offer a handshake, just a critical once-over. "So you're the sick guy," Marcus said, his voice flat. "Let's see what you've got." 1 lap, as fast as you can. Jonah's heart sank. A single lap? He took a deep breath and pushed off. His legs felt heavy and uncoordinated. His lungs burned after 50 meters. He stumbled, his form a mess of compensation and weakness. He finished the lap, gasping, his hands on his knees, his vision spotting. Marcus watched, his arms crossed, a look of pure disdain on his face. "That's it?" he scoffed. "You think you can run a marathon? Look at you. You can barely run a quarter mile." I have a condition," Jonah panted, humiliation heating his face. "But I'm getting stronger. Strength has nothing to do with it," Marcus interrupted, his voice like a whip crack in the dawn air. "You're too weak. Your body is broken. A marathon? It's a fantasy. You'll never finish. You'll probably hurt yourself. I don't train lost causes. Don't waste my time, and don't waste yours." He turned and walked away, leaving Jonah alone on the empty track. The words, "too weak," and "lost cause," echoing in the silence, louder than the doctor's diagnosis had ever been. The drive home was a blur of hot, shameful tears. Marcus's rejection felt like a final verdict, a confirmation of everything his body had been screaming at him for 2 years. "You are broken. You are weak. Know your place." He pulled into his apartment complex and sat in the car, staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. It was Maya. How did it go with the coach? Followed by a string of eager emojis. He couldn't text her back. He couldn't tell her. The hope in her message felt like an accusation. He dragged himself upstairs and collapsed onto his couch, the familiar weight of despair pressing down on him. He looked around his small apartment. It was filled with relics of his old life. A trophy from a high school football game, a photo of him on a hiking trip, muscles taut and tanned. They felt like artifacts from someone else's life. He closed his eyes and instead of Marcus's sneering face, he saw the runners in the park. He felt the ghost of that longing for freedom. And then a new, fiercer emotion rose to meet the despair: anger. A white-hot, purifying rage. Who was Marcus to tell him what his limits were? Who was anyone to decide his finish line? He stood up, his body protesting. He walked to his closet and found an old, faded t-shirt and a pair of running shoes he'd bought online during a late-night fit of optimism. They were still pristine. He laced them up. The simple act felt significant, like donning armor. He walked back outside. He wouldn't go to the track. That was Marcus's territory. He'd run here, in his own neighborhood. He set a timer on his phone for 1 minute. Just 1 minute of running. That was all. He started. It was ugly. His feet slapped the pavement awkwardly. His breath hitched. Every muscle fiber screamed in protest. But he didn't stop. He kept moving, a slow, shuffling jog, until the timer beeped. He stopped, hands on his knees, just as he had on the track. But this time, he was smiling. It was a grim, determined smile. But it was real. He had run for 1 minute. The next day, he ran for 90 seconds. The day after that, 2 minutes. He didn't have a coach, a plan, or any idea what he was doing. All he had was a defiant, stubborn refusal to accept the verdict of too weak. He was building his own foundation, one painful, clumsy step at a time. The following weeks were a solitary grind. Jonah's world became a cycle of run, eat, sleep, and hurt. He created his own training plan, cobbled together from internet articles and sheer instinct. He ran in the quiet hours before dawn, when no one was around to see his struggling form. The darkness was his ally, hiding his imperfections, muffling the sound of his labored breathing. His body was a battlefield. Shin splints flared with a searing pain that made him gasp. His knees ached constantly. There were days when the fatigue from his condition was so profound that getting out of bed felt like a marathon in itself. On those days, Marcus's voice would slither back into his mind. Lost cause. Too weak. He learned to talk back to it. I ran for 10 minutes straight yesterday. You don't know me. He found a small, secluded park with a dirt trail that was softer on his joints. This became his sanctuary. He marked his progress not in miles, but in lampposts. 1 week, he could run from the entrance to the 3rd lamppost. The next, he made it to the 5th. It was infuriatingly slow progress, but it was progress. He kept his mission a secret from everyone except Maya. He couldn't bear the thought of more pity, or, worse, more doubt. When she asked how it was going, he'd just say, "I'm still running." She'd send him money for new shoes, for protein powder, her belief in him a silent, steady force. One rainy Tuesday, he hit a wall. His legs felt like lead. His lungs refused to expand fully. He was supposed to run for 20 minutes, but he collapsed onto a wet park bench after 8, sobbing in frustration. This was impossible. Marcus was right. He was a fool. As he sat there, drenched and defeated, an elderly man walking a small, scruffy dog approached. The man sat down beside him, not saying a word. After a few minutes of companionable silence, the man spoke, his voice raspy but kind. "Rough day." Jonah just nodded, unable to speak. "My grandson, he runs these things," the man said, gesturing vaguely. "Marathons. He told me something once. He said the marathon doesn't really start until mile 20. The first 20 miles are just the price of admission. The real race is in your head, in those last 6 miles, when everything hurts, and you want to quit." He patted Jonah's knee. "You've already paid a higher price than most, son. Don't quit before the real race even starts." The man stood up and continued his walk, his little dog trotting beside him. Jonah watched him go, the words settling deep inside him. He wasn't just training his body. He was training his mind. He was paying his price. He got up from the bench and, with tears and rain mixing on his face, he finished his run. 3 months into his training, Jonah was up to 10 miles on his long runs. It was agonizing, but he was doing it. He had started to allow himself to believe, just a little, that the finish line might be possible. He felt a flicker of the old strength returning, not the brute force of his construction days, but a leaner, more resilient power born from struggle. Then, the setback came. It started with a fever, a deep, bone-aching chill that no blanket could warm. Then came the familiar, terrifying weakness, the feeling of his muscles turning to sand. It was a flare-up. His autoimmune condition, silent for months, was roaring back to life. He spent a week in bed, too weak to even walk to the kitchen. The despair was worse than ever because he had dared to hope. The marathon was only 3 months away. All that work, all that pain, was being erased. Marcus's voice was a triumphant scream in his head. "I told you. You're broken. A lost cause." Maya came over every day, bringing him soup and sitting with him. She didn't offer platitudes. She just sat, her presence a quiet anchor. "It's over, Maya," he whispered one afternoon, his voice hollow. "I can't do it." "Okay," she said simply. "Then it's over. But the marathon is still 3 months away. You don't have to decide that today." Her calm acceptance, her refusal to join his panic, was strangely grounding. She was right. He didn't have to decide today. The flare-up subsided after 10 days, leaving him even weaker than before. He stood in front of his apartment mirror and saw the familiar hollows in his cheeks, the renewed frailty in his limbs. The 10-mile runner was gone. He went back to the park. He set his timer for 1 minute. He started to run. It was just as hard as that very first day. The shame was immense. But he did it. Then he did it again the next day. He was starting over. But this time, he knew he could do it. He had already climbed this mountain once. He knew the path. The price of admission had just gone up, but he was still willing to pay. The final 3 months were a psychological war. Every twinge of pain, every moment of fatigue, was a potential landmine. Jonah's training was no longer about building fitness. It was about building an unbreakable mind. He practiced positive self-talk, visualizing the finish line until he could feel the weight of a medal around his neck. He wrote Marcus's words, "too weak," on a piece of paper, and then set it on fire in his kitchen sink, watching the negativity turn to ash.